Okay, so now I will talk about what I call the Prisma, which is a way of doing this literature review very structured way, because I haven't been that structured so far. I don't like structure that much, but structure is useful. Maybe for you it's good because I like transparency that I like, but I sometimes I feel like it's very difficult to follow like a process, like if we were a machine or something. But anyway, we have this a strategy that you can use, very useful. It's called Prisma, and it means this prefer reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So a lot of words as well. We call it Prisma. And the idea is that if you use this, and I highly recommend to use this or something similar, because your examiner will be very happy to see it, because that means that you are being transparent. And if your examiner also likes replicability, he will be also very happy. So you make happy to the two kind of people that you will face as an examiner. And it looks like this. As you can see, it basically shows all the steps that you did to finish in the final list of your studies. This one is quite complex. I found it in a paper. I think I have it in the references, which paper is it from? But basically, and this is quite a complex map. I will show you a simple one that I have on one of my papers, but you start with the number of papers that you have from the initial very initial search, the one that I told you about. When you finish here, when you finish with that, that's what you report in here. And you report the databases that you use. Of course, maybe you will only use one. It's a thesis, so it's okay if you only use Scopus or if you only use the database from the university. And how many papers or articles did you find? So that is the first point. Then you need to, as I said, you have to move everything into Excel. And then in Excel, you need to start cleaning that list. So the first thing that you will do is to take out the papers that are duplicate, right? Like you don't want to have the same paper, right? So you report on that. How many were duplicate and you took them out from your list? Also, you can remove them because they are from a different language. That's a very typical thing that happens. You remove them because of the language. And then you will finish with a new number. And then you do more things. I think this is very complex and I will explain an easier way to do it. And then at some point you finish with a list like that screen in the Excel. Maybe you started with 150 and you finish with 50 papers or 40 papers. So those 40 papers that you finish with, then you will have to read these 40 papers because that's the end of the list. I will show you other criteria to reject papers, but you will finish with 40 papers. So from those 40 papers, you need to, or you will probably be interested on some papers that this paper cited, right? So you read a paper, you think that one is interesting, and then you go to that paper. So that is what we call in here the identification of new studies via other methods. Other methods, which is the manual search that I told you before. So here you can incorporate like maybe like something that you find from another paper. That's what you do in here. So you find a paper from 2006, and that paper cites another paper from 2004 that somehow you didn't pick in your list. So you can include it in here. You directly, manually search for that paper and then you incorporate it. So let's say that from the electronic search, you finish, you take out all of the ones that you don't like and you finish with 40. And then you read these 40 papers and then you identify that there are maybe 10 that are relevant and then you manually include these 10. And then you finish with a list of 50 papers, right? So let me show you the simpler version of this. So this is actually a real research. So I started with a list of 250 articles from the data, from the electronic search. And I found 80 duplicates. I had duplicates because I used two. I think I used Scopus and Web of Science, two indexes. So I used two. So that's why I had duplicates. So from 250, I took out 80. Probably you won't have the duplicates. So maybe you can skip this, maybe for you. Maybe you don't have this, you start from here. So you in identification, you have 170. From those 170, that means that I started with an Excel file of 170 papers, and I screen them. I look at their topic, I look at their method, I look at their sample. I didn't read all of them, I just screened them. I look at their findings, all of this. And from this 170, I deleted 97 because of this. 97 were outside of the scope. I think this paper was on auditing and family firms. So it was probably not about auditing or probably not about family firms. Somehow they managed to get into, but they were not family firms or auditing, probably not that. And here it is, not dealing with auditing, not dealing with family ownership. So I took them out. And also because they weren't in English. I focused only on doing in English. So you also have to justify that. Everything you have to justify. Why something that is, I think it's easy to delete papers that are not from your topic, that's it. But why not another language? You can say, because I don't know that language, but also you can say that, I think that's the easiest way to justify why not. Like, I don't speak German, so I didn't include it. But you can also say that maybe it sounds very colonial, but you can say that usually researching another language is not in the same conversation as mainstream research, but I think that's a quite racist assumption, but you have to justify somehow. So also check with your supervisor, how can you justify dropping things from another language? Then so I finished with 73 articles, and I did have to read the 73 articles. This was my first list of after the screening. I finished with 73 articles, but I also had to drop 31. Why? Because I realized that the focus was not auditing or family firms. They talk about it, that's why they passed the screen, because they had the words. But when I read them, I realized it was not the focus. And also, but here I think I took too long to use the quality criteria, because probably I would have used it before. But I realized that I have some papers that didn't belong to a scope, or I don't know, I can't remember what I used, ABS, I think. So according to my quality standards, they didn't belong in here. So I had to drop them. So because when I read them, it was not the focus, auditing or family firms, I dropped them, and also the quality. So I finished with 42. And then from those 42, I found some interesting papers that had the quality, but somehow didn't make it in here. And then I incorporated 13 papers, and I finished with 55 studies. And those 55 studies are in my literature review. So that, as you can see, it is a very, very transparent thing. It is somehow a lot of work, but that's the way you do it. I think there is not another way to do it. Like you have to read, and that's great. Every time that I was reading one of these 42 papers, I was increasing in that criteria that we did in the past lecture, that how well, how much I know about the literature. I was improving. And that's the only way. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able first to problematize, and I wouldn't be even able to do the study, and much less I wouldn't be able to propose a contribution if I don't know the literature. So the only way, you can't skip reading, you have to read. So these numbers sound good. That's why I think I think I went too far. 250 is too much. I think for a thesis, you start with 100 and 150, you drop, and then you end up with maybe 20 papers. That's good. The papers that you will read, 20, 25. That's what I also say, 25 papers, like a good number. Again, not the rule, not a rule, not a law, but sounds like 25 is good for a thesis. So let's finish in here, because next I will conclude the literature review method, and then we talk about how to analyze and how to structure the literature review.